Καλησπέρα σας. Good afternoon. It is the last panel of the day after two very full working days during this summit. And I'm very honored to be here together with very important people around the globe. There are many people following this discussion online. This room has been full all day. This is the end of the day and you may be tired. But still, there are a few things that we need to share with you that we consider very important. You know, SCOHRE is an international association of smoking control and harm reduction. It's a Brussels-based NGO that was formed a few years back from international experts supporting harm reduction. There is no doubt that smoking cessation and smoking prevention are the most valuable interventions to curb the smoking habit, the smoking epidemic. However, for many years, we have tried to just stop people from smoking or start smoking, and we failed. This is something known to most people following this discussion and most people attending this conference. And this summit is in its 6th year, and Professor Vardas, who is here with me today, was one of the first people, a very well-known and very knowledgeable clinician with international career that supported us. And he's here to just share with me this experience. And SCOHRE was formed out of this summit because we felt that there was a gap. There was an unmet need. There were people around the globe that believed in they had convictions, they had ideas. We're supposed to be a scientific summit, which means that we are led from the principles of science, from evidence. But we've seen throughout this summit, the last 2 days, that many people around the globe are misinformed about what smoking does, what vape does, what alternative tobacco products do, and we have to just fight WHO. WHO, who is supposed to be the leader in the globe to fight epidemics, the leader for public health, for vaccinations, are not recognizing that smoking cessation and smoking prevention is not enough to overcome this, the effects of smoking. So last year, for the first time, we said we are so small, although we try hard, and although we are, we have people around 17 countries, we are so small and we need to just create a network and ally with other associations, with other like-minded people. And for the first time last year, we invited other harm reduction associations to join us in this summit, but offline also. Why? Because we want to share practices, we want to share experiences, we want to just find common ways to convey the right messages that will be understood. I am a scientist, but an expert in scientific communication. My job is to say something simple that may be understood. And we know that although scientists have fought for many years to just convey the message of harm reduction with respect to smoking, we haven't done so good. We haven't really been successful. On the contrary, from this two-day conference, it appears that the more people are uptaking vaping and or novel nicotine products or alternative to tobacco, the more the resistance increases. So instead of achieving more, we achieve less. And this is why we just make a plea to other organizations. We know that many of you represent some, there are many, to just connect. And today I would like to present to you some organizations that have not been with us. They are with us for the first time. And, you know, Tim Phillips, we had some people who just had to leave because, you know, their flights were so, they were here, we probably met them and discussed with them. But we asked them to just make a video statement that will be shared with you. We also have some people online who will join afterwards. I mean, Professor Mata from Philippines. And we also have two distinguished ladies here that will share the discourse with you all. Can we have the video, please?
Hello, my name is Tim Phillips, and I am the Managing Director of ECigIntelligence and Tobacco Intelligence. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, I spoke yesterday, and apologies that I'm not able to be here live for the panel discussion this afternoon. Unfortunately, I've got to get on the plane. What I wanted to talk about around this session around tobacco harm reduction and the role of associations in it, I wanted to first point out that we're not an association. And I want to be very clear about that. We're an independent data source. So we work with governments, we work with associations, non-governmental organisations and so on, but we don't ever do lobbying. And I think it's really important that we're in that position where we can be objective about the sector, we can provide data. My personal opinion, you won't be surprised to know about that, is that I think data is incredibly important in moving this debate on. And I think that data really needs to be used by associations in the sector to make their points and to move public opinion. There's been various discussions over the last 2 days which have been excellent around public opinion on the issue of tobacco harm reduction, but also on the role of informing government regulators to make good policy and legal environments for these products. And I couldn't make that point more important. I think it's absolutely essential that data is used here. And the work that you all are doing as scientists in this sector is incredibly important. Don't think that it's not. It's a slow process, it's a drip effect, and it's really, really important. I wanted to talk a little bit about the problems that this sector is having in terms of public opinion. I think we've talked about the fact that the public opinion around tobacco and nicotine pouch and vape products is actually going backwards. We're seeing public opinion become more resistant to these products. But I think it's also important not to fall into the trap of thinking this is some huge conspiracy against the products. The fact of the matter is that if you walk out of this room and you go and ask people on the street what they think about these products, the general view is going to be quite negative. And I think that's completely understandable. It's a human reaction to new technology, and it's inevitable that that is the case for these products. So hence all the more important that you guys are doing the science to back up the facts around these products and make that clear, and that will be what moves public opinion and ultimately regulation. I want to talk about the fact that getting data is very difficult. This is a highly fragmented sector. When you look at the products, they're continually changing, they're being updated, particularly in things like vape. Every year there are new products out there. And so the science around that needs to change, needs to react with those changing products. And this is a difficult sector to get data on. If you go and ask consumers about their habits concerning nicotine, you're often going to get very strange data back, very different reactions to surveying people about their nicotine habits. around the second point, I suppose, around bringing data in is to inform policy making and eventual regulatory regulation forming. And I think as we've talked about over the last 2 years, I think that in many cases the battle for tobacco harm reduction is something that's being lost at the moment. We're not convincing people that tobacco harm reduction is a good thing. And a lot of regulators are moving to these new products in the same category of tobacco products, combustible tobacco products, and are tending towards regulating them in the same way. But again, as some people have talked about, enforcement.
But you know, we heard very important data that Phillips presented. You know, the fact that it's an independent consultancy that you know, gathers data and policies around the globe gave us a very good picture of what is going on. And one of the issues that we identified during these 2 days is how important data are, because for all those who believe that policies should be based on evidence and data, you know, support all this work, and, you know, our effort will be to just create more and more data so that politicians will have a very good reason to just decide otherwise from what data showcase. And I will not go to the second video, but I would like to just ask one of the two ladies, Mary Stamp, yes, to just share with us your experience and...
Okay, so my name is Mary Stamp, and I'm a trustee for the New Nicotine Alliance UK, the NNA. We are a group of individuals who together and as a group work with leading smoking and tobacco researchers and policy analysts to contribute towards the understanding of tobacco harm reduction. We're not for profit, we're independent, our policies are evidence-based, and they focus on the health of consumers and the wider public.
Thank you very much. And I would also like to ask Jeannie to talk a little bit herself.
Thank you. I'm Jeannie Cameron. I have my own consultancy, but today I'm representing the UK Vape Industry Association. And it's an association of over 100 members within the UK and some from overseas. And it has, was very happy to be part of the SCOHRE consensus, because it read your consensus document and was very happy to sign on to that, because it's looking at the need that we've heard over the last 2 days to bring the science and evidence on tobacco harm reduction to those that need to hear it. I think one of the things that the UK Vape Association does bring together, and in fact it's having a conference on the 10th of November, it does bring together business, industry, regulatory experts, you know, people from all sides. I think one of the things that we have as an issue is the translation of all that really good science into something that policymakers can understand. As a person that has been around this issue for 25 years or more, and not being a scientist but being a policy expert, some of it is very, even though I know the issues very well, it's very hard to understand. So it actually made me think, I can see possibly why politicians who make their decisions a lot of the time on the media, or what are the headlines and what's there, our message perhaps isn't getting across in a way that it needs to. I think over time the evidence and all of the science of tobacco harm reduction will come together and prove that, but perhaps we need to be better at translating that. And in doing that, I think what you've put together here is a very good organisational structure to try and do that by bringing everyone together. And I think that's quite unique in that so many of the other conferences, they focus just on maybe vaping or others. And I think tobacco harm reduction, as we've heard, is all about all options that consumers can choose from. And the UK Vape Industry Association, although it represents vaping, it acknowledges and accepts that consumers need choice. So heated tobacco products, snus and nicotine pouches are all something in the remit that they project. And I think what we can do is from our, the industry that or the association, is to try and take that science and get it to policymakers in a much more digestible format. And I think next year, having more policy people here to listen to those scientific messages, and if the scientists can present things sometimes in a little bit what we'd call plain English, it would be probably easier for them to get that message. But I think it's a great start, and the collaboration is truly it's to be recommended and congratulated. And congratulations to you, Professor Vardas, for initiating such a forum and to present this and bring the tobacco harm reduction issues together.
Professor Vardas is, he's a professor of cardiology with an international career, hundreds of publications, and I remember several years back, I said to him, I just need to push forward this. And he said, are you sure? This will be very hard. And, but he has always been around us, and he talked about choices, and he also talked about, the human nature. And before I give the floor to Professor Matta, I would like Professor Vardas to just make a comment for all this effort we are pushing forward.
Thank you very much, Lina. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, my name is Panos Vardas, and I am a cardiologist with a long career in international cardiovascular sciences promotion. So my position here is a little bit, let's say, difficult. First, because I have to declare that I am expressing personal views, not constitutional views. As past president of the European Society of Cardiology and still ESC strategist, I have to declare that, no doubt, there is the institutional view, but also there are some philosophical or realistic personal options that we could approach this very difficult issue, which is tobacco cessation. My philosophical view and my, let's say, realistic view starts with the assumption that human being is a hedonistic being. Through the centuries, millions of years, or at least thousands of years, human being is a hedonistic being. No doubt, in many ways, these attitudes of the human being were catastrophic, self-catastrophic. One of those is, of course, smoking habit. Smoking, without any doubt, is catastrophic for the human health, and especially for heart and lungs. Okay, great. So all of us here, we have accepted that we have to organize our efforts how to stop smoking, the classical smoking. The ideal alternative is the complete absence and refrain from smoking and any kind of tobacco products. No doubt, this is the ideal. However, as I said, between the ideal and the catastrophic, sometimes we have to recognize alternative ways, practical and realistic for the human being. For example, according to the WHO, 1 glass of alcohol per day is harmful, correct? This is the official message of WHO. It says that the daily consumption intake of 1 glass of wine is possibly catastrophic. But on the other hand, there is the realistic attitude and the practical attitude of millions of persons through the centuries. They are like to consume 1 or 2 glasses of wine. Talking about smoking, talking about harm reduction, no doubt, any well-documented product leading to a harm reduction is very well, should be very well discussed and then possibly accepted. But, as all the time I'm arguing here, Lina, for me, the most important is evidences, scientific evidences. Before we have to accept any product presenting itself as a harm reduction product, we need desperately to get well-documented evidences. Okay? Since we recognize that one certain product has indeed less risks than the classical smoking, it's something for further discussion. In the past, I used an example which, to some degree, is quite close to the situation we, the cardiologists, face today. You know, the priests in Africa, Catholic priests, should follow the dogma, the doctrine of Pope. And the doctrine of Pope is clear. The
abstinence.
Sorry? It's clear that to use any kind of protection during the sex is forbidden, according to the Pope doctrine, correct? This is not, here is black and white. Pope accepts, does not accept any way for sex more safe protection. However, the priests in Africa know very well that AIDS is such high there that not to suggest to the persons in Africa to use protection during the sex is not practical. So these poor priests have to select between the reality and the doctrine. More or less the same is here with us, the cardiologists. We have to think between the doctrine of the big, let's say, associations, which is complete tobacco cessation, tobacco product cessation, and the practical realities. For me personally, being a realistic personality, it is very important to know that persons have some alternatives to use products leading to a harm reduction. And this is why I'm here, because, as I said, all the times I try to balance between the ideal and the realistic. And something else, talking about human beings. So Lina here is not just the discussion in this business, is not just only about tobacco and smoking cessation. It's not only harm reduction. to some degree, the whole discussion is more philosophical, in my humble understanding. The whole discussion is much more philosophical. If human being could be completely sterilized for any kind of hedonism, because hedonism, to a significant degree, is dangerous. Sex is dangerous, alcohol is dangerous, smoking, of course, is dangerous. Anything is dangerous. But is this possible? Is this possible to sterilize human beings? What I'm not listening, it is cannabis. Cannabis is not discussed in this discussion. It's only all the time in the international organization meetings, the risk of cannabis is not discussed, which is strange, very strange. Anyway, I'm not sure if I have passed my, let's say, pondering to the audience, but again, I'm here to discuss evidences, realism, and to see how human beings could enjoy a little bit their life, if they like, but with much less risks during these products consumption.
In the previous panels today, we refer to snus. We have so much data from snus as a safe way of nicotine use for years and decades. And Professor Heiner would have been here, but he talked to us earlier, and also Konstantinos Farsalinos also, and many other people talked about that. But what happens, this discussion, unfortunately, is not only philosophical, is that we have data, compelling data, that if you use safe products of tobacco like snus, and now we have even products, tobacco-less products of snus, you can still be addicted to nicotine and at the same time smoke-free. So I would like Professor Mata to join us online and state his view. Hello, Professor Mata.
Hello. Good day to everyone. I would like to reiterate my thanks to the organizers for the opportunity to virtually participate in your scientific summit on tobacco harm reduction. Again, I'm the president of an advocacy group in the Philippines, Quit for Good, and I've been also an occupational medical specialist for many years, 40 years.
Thank you very much. Please go on.
Yes. Now, this Quit for Good group,
tell us more about about your group. Tell us more about the actions.
Advocates real and practical solution that seeks to eliminate once and for all the leading cause of preventable death and diseases, smoking combustible cigarettes. The approach is to stop smoking altogether. This is the gold standard of our main thrust as an advocacy group. Unfortunately, not everyone is successful in quitting and wants to quit smoking. Having said this, it is about time that we all recognize the effectiveness of vapor products or e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products as a risk reduction strategy for adult smokers. If we are talking about smoke-free alternatives as replacement therapy, there are still 14 million Filipino smokers with measly quit rate of 4%, measured as of 2021, which largely remained unchanged from 2015, where smokers only rely on quitting cold turkey or pharmacological nicotine replacement therapies like nicotine gums, nicotine patches, nicotine sprays. The cold facts on smoking prevalence in the Philippines are a testament to the ineffectiveness of these options. in addressing the Filipino smoking habit. In that case, we should look into other ways of reducing the harm associated with smoking rather than seeing recalcitrant smokers going back to combustible cigarettes. But is there adequate application of harm reduction principles in clinical practice? Well, there is a strong need to educate both adult smokers and medical experts on the science behind the less harmful nature of smoke-free alternatives to combustible tobacco, such as vapor products and heated tobacco products. Clinical application of tobacco harm reduction as far as vapor products and heated tobacco products are concerned should be augmented to fast-track the decline in smoking prevalence. When I am approached by a recalcitrant cigarette smoker, I always tell them to quit smoking altogether. That is the best route to eliminating the harms of combustible cigarettes. But I also know that a significant number of my patients do not really quit. To counteract this phenomenon, our advocacy group for other ways of quitting combustible cigarettes becomes impactful. This is when vapor products and heated tobacco products come into play. Of course, the best way to achieve an optimal decline in smoking prevalence is quitting smoking cigarettes completely. This is the main pillar of our advocacy. If cold turkey is not feasible, there are nicotine replacement therapies such as nicotine gums, nicotine patches, and nicotine sprays available in markets, which wean smokers off the deadly habit. Though, as I have mentioned, the success rate is very, very low. But for progressive doctors like me, like myself, we do not give up and instead go to another level in the risk reduction spectrum. And that is recommending smoke-free vapor products and heated tobacco products to recalcitrant smokers. This is, in fact, where tobacco harm reduction is anchored to. Now, on the part of the policy makers, how should they evaluate harm reduction strategies from an investment versus outcome perspective? Well, it is also high time to throw the whole kitchen sink when it comes to incorporating tobacco harm reduction strategies in policy making. Promoting the health of adult smokers by providing access to less harmful alternatives to smoking, such as vapor products and heated tobacco products, is worth every penny of the national coffers. But according to WHO, World Health Organization, combustible tobacco smoking kills more than 8 million people each year. More than 7 million of those deaths are the result of direct tobacco use, while around 1.2 million are the result of non-smokers being exposed to secondhand smoke. This is a wake-up call for every government to genuinely invest in the improvement of overall public health by any means possible. The best way to avoid the harms of cigarette smoking is, again, as simple as quitting completely. Inasmuch as we want all smokers to quit, in reality, not everyone would want to quit. We in Quit for Good put forward that the traditional quit or die approach to public health must be abandoned immediately. As I've said, a third option must be available to our adult smokers who do not wish to quit: tobacco harm reduction, through the use and promotion of safer alternatives such as vapor products and heated tobacco products to combustible tobacco, should be employed to substantially reduce the risk of death and disease of smoking. Laws and government policies should be revisited, carefully calibrated to ensure that adult smokers are made aware of the less harmful alternatives available and given the option to shift to these alternatives, while minors and non-smokers are protected. Over-regulating these better alternatives to the point of impossibility of compliance would only perpetuate smoking. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mata. I will just comment on two things that you said. You said that government should, do carefully calibrated policies. You also said, you referred to the global number of deaths. And I wanted to ask you, is your government monitoring the smoking habit? Do they count how many people are smoking? How many people quit smoking? How many people, change to vape? Do you have numbers? Do you have numbers that you can follow through along the years? If a policy changes, and that applies to all of us, I think that whenever you go to your government and say, well, 8 million people die every year, 1 point plus is from passive smoking, or 1.3 billion people are smoking, they are not interested because they prefer local data. Do you have data yourself? I know that some countries like UK, they monitor.
Yeah.
They have good data, we don't. New Zealand is monitoring. Probably, and other countries also do. We don't. What we have is what, WHO really asks us to have, and we have, a survey. And this year, actually, we had a report also in Greece. We have a survey started, funded from the industry. What can we say? It's, it's conducted by one of the top professors we have here in Greece, and a very good team, about the smoking habit. Smoking, the nicotine use, not only smoke. Do you have such data in the Philippines?
Yeah, we have data. So we have also the GAT survey in our country. And for now, we have about 14 million tobacco cigarette smokers in our country. And as for the death survey that's attributed to the smoking-related diseases, we have 117,000 deaths per year. Okay? And we have over 1 million vapers already in the Philippines. So we have noticed that as the vaping numbers of vapers increase in the Philippines, the smoking cessation incidence or prevalence also decreased. So we are monitoring that, and that's we are sure to update this every so often.
Thank you. I think I would like to hear the video of Professor Toldy. What I wanted to say is that we can move forward by preaching what we believe is right, and providing the data, from different countries when they have them, rigorous and very well set. But if we do not produce data of our own in our countries, we will not be able to push forward legislation change. Can we have the video of Professor Toldy?
So the harm reduction is a global aim, but the focus point of harm reduction is different from country to country. What we did as a harm reduction association in Hungary in the last years, we are trying to focus to the medical harm reduction. So we made a focus program with the Edenred to the healthy diet. So we created some healthy diet foods, which is cheaper all over in Hungary. It's about 3,000 places. And this is one thing. The other one, we are trying to focus to the patients who are after the heart attack or myocardial infarction, and we are created some trails, some routes for the people who are suffered or who are after a myocardial infarction. In the last 7 years, we created 7 places, about 20 routes for these patients. But now in this year, we doubled the whole places and the number of the routes. And it looks like for next year we will finish this program. So we will cover Hungary about 30 places, and it means 100 trails for the people who are after myocardial infarction, who has hypertonia or diabetes. And of course, we are focusing for the nicotine harm reductions. So what we did in the last year, we were about 80 places for medical meetings, and we made 10 to 20 minutes long presentations. So nearly everybody knows about the doctors and the nurses now what the meaning of medical harm reduction in Hungary. So this is what we did in the last year. And actually, because in Hungary there will be some local elections in the next year, we are trying to focus to give the knowledge about the harm reduction to the decision makers for politics. This is why we made a V4 meeting in Brussels. And after this meeting, it looks like that some politicians can understand what is the meaning of the harm reduction. So probably we will use it in the next year. Actually, so we are in transitions. Nearly everybody knows about the medical field, what the meaning of harm reduction, and we have a lot of things to do in the next year. So we are working. Thank you.
I like the strategy of the Hungarian harm reduction group because they are focused. You know, they have a specific trust strategy to medical professionals, and they found a way in their own country how just proceed. You know,
yeah.
Please go on.
As I'm listening, the presenters, but also what we are talking for, Lina, again and again, in my mind, it's getting clear that we need metrics and evidences. And this is particularly important for the politicians and the decision makers. It's clear that in this discussion, there are very, very, let's say, dedicated, fanatic supporters of the complete smoking cessation of any kind of similar products, etc., etc. And as I said before, there is the realism around at the moment that millions of persons are still smoking, or at least are using alternative products. In my humble view, if we had clear metrics how much these alternative products, and I'm talking about vape, and I'm talking about heating tobacco, if we had clear evidences indicating that the ischemic heart disease or the lung cancer, because these alternative products has been reduced by 30%, this is indeed a huge, let's say, argument or weapon for those who are in favor of the alternative products. But at the moment, in my humble view, we are still lagging behind of these clear metrics and clear evidences. And what the industry should make, together with the European Union possibly, is to organize clinical trials, surveys, registries, to examine what is the, if any, the beneficial effect of vaping and tobacco heating versus the classical smoking. Somebody could argue saying, but Professor Vardas, these alternative products are few only years in the market. Actually, progressively, the number of the years accumulated are not so few. It's about 10 years now that we have in the market alternative products, especially vaping, but also heating of tobacco. So now, and progressively during the next years, we have to see. Imagine if progressively we have recognized that persons between 30 and 40 using alternatives of the classical smoking have not developed cancer much higher than the normal rate, the average rate, not normal, the average rate, or heart disease. That will be very important.
Well, I would like to ask Mary to just address some of these issues, because I know she has some answers, and also Jeannie.
Thanks.
Please.
So, in the UK, we know that smoking remains the largest cause of preventable death in the UK.
Absolutely,
and
yes.
it kills around 64,000 people a year.
Yeah.
In addition to the immense human suffering, it costs somewhere in the region, and I wrote this down because I always get the numbers slightly off, our cost to our National Health Service, the NHS, is somewhere in the region of 2.4 billion each year. And the wider economic cost, so the cost that comes from loss of work days, loss of somebody who works at all in the home, comes to around 17 billion a year. So these are vast numbers. But progress has been made in quitting. So we know that in 1974, around 45% of British adults smoked. And by 2022, that number was just under 13%. So we know that it is working. And we also know that novel products, all of them, have contributed to that. And that has been recognised in the United Kingdom with the Khan Review, which came out last year. So Dr. Javed Khan ran an independent review, making smoking obsolete. And it was commissioned by the UK Health Secretary, so looking for an evidence base. And in that report, there was a clear message that the government needed to embrace harm reduction methods. So vaping was specifically mentioned, but all the novel products do play a role in helping. And that decision was taken because the evidence base was clear. So since 2015, the annual reviews that have been carried out by Public Health England have consistently shown, Public Health England is now the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities. But they've consistently found vaping to be 95% less harmful than smoking. And we also know that in 2017, an estimated 50,000 smokers quit using a vaping device. So we know that those numbers are high, and we would expect that data to start feeding in reductions in cost as time goes on. But I would also say in terms of how the evidence is taken by parliamentarians, that's a very different issue. And part of the problem with it is that the field is not understood. The science is complicated, and you need a background. So unless the science is easy to understand and it is timely, because you're not going to get a researcher whose main focus is something completely different, remembering all the data up until the time legislation goes through. So that information needs to be fed in a timely manner to researchers as well as to members, would be what I say about the UK.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'd reiterate that as well. And I think that there's another factor here, which is not it. Of course, the science and evidence is probably one of the most fundamental things to collect, because that's on what the argument is based. But there's another factor. There's another factor here, and that is the campaign against this issue. I mean, we heard that, and we know that there's 50 or more years of epidemiological evidence on Swedish snus, yet policy makers ban it in most parts of the world. So it's not just about collecting the science and evidence, because there is the evidence and it is ignored, and policy which is completely contrary to that. So the other factor, the campaign against us, as it were, against harm reduction. It's really important, I think, for the scientific community to really understand it's like a war. You wouldn't go to war without understanding your opponent, and yet so many do not really fully understand that campaign against it. It is a global campaign, as we know, organised by the WHO with very well funded. Bloomberg Foundation has put $146 million each year for the last few years into the campaign against this issue. So we need to fully understand it. We need to come together more clearly. The World Health Organization's constitution says very clearly that it is something, paraphrasing, very important aim to have the highest attainable level of human health that is there. That is reiterated in the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, of which 193 governments negotiated for that to be in there, those words. We have over 180 governments that are parties to that treaty, and they should be actually forced back on those messages that, you know, this is a really important issue that people need to have access to, and information about less harmful objectives and less harmful products should they be there. And it's about understanding that it's a human rights issue. In fact, the FCTC also recalls, I think it's the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights that, you know, gives the rights to health to people. And we need to use those arguments. We need to go back to our governments that actually have, as I said, 180 governments have ratified that treaty, which means that they have taken on a legal obligation to implement what is in that treaty. And it says very clearly in the objective, it's against smoke, but it says that it is that governments must employ supply reduction, demand reduction and harm reduction strategies. You look at Australia and you think, well, it's done demand and supply reduction, but where is the government on harm reduction? And yet it is an equal obligation. And all governments, pretty much, there's only 5 governments that are outside the FCTC ratification that actually do that. And it's, I think the more we can come together and bring and talk about these issues, and so the scientists understand the legal and policy side, and the legal and policy people understand the science side, and we understand consumers who are using these products, why they're using these products. Martin indicated in his speech earlier that consumers are completely ignored. They're not even talked to, not only just in the WHO context, but also in the national context. People just ignore, and yet the stories that consumers have are very, very important. And I think, you know, this is speaking personally, not for the UKVIA or any clients. I think we should broaden this debate into looking at, and it's been touched on, that there are therapeutic benefits to nicotine. So it's beyond just having people who are smoking to quit smoking using harm reduction products, but actually look at some of the benefits of nicotine that assist therapeutically to some of the issues that we have. We all know when you get a prescription for high blood pressure or even an aspirin, it comes with a paper inside the packet which says, these are the contraindications, these are the risks. But when it comes to nicotine, we say, oh no, it's addiction forming, abuse liability, we can't even go there. Yet perhaps we should think more broadly and think that there are some benefits, and perhaps those benefits outweigh the risks that are there.
I just wanted to add as well, the consumer voices are not being heard partly because they're not speaking up. So we do have a problem with people who are consumers not contacting their elected representatives to make the point that these are products that they use, that they do want them properly regulated, that they don't want them falling into the hands of children, and that they do help them quit and make their lives healthier. And elected representatives react to people contacting them, to volumes of correspondence. And without that volume of correspondence, there is a correlation to how many people will then bother to go forward and look at the scientific evidence, because it's simply not on their radar.
One thing we know is that, you know, in many places, consumers, smokers, I'm not saying consumers, smokers are considered weak, that they cannot quit, that, you know, are no good. Sometimes, you know, if you're a smoker, smoking was a tax issue, order, you know, tax society issue. Low-class people, low in the society would smoke more. So there are also cultural issues. You can see, we know that people with low income smoke more. I don't know whether it's stress, I don't know, it's habit, because we know also illegal trade is a huge issue in the world. It's getting bigger and bigger, because when we say let's tax more, people would go to the illegal tax. I know that it happens in my country. I know that it happens in many places in the world. Even in Panama, where the COP10 is going to be held and everything is banned, you know, the illegal trade is, you know, is making a lot of money. There are differences. What I know from a harm reduction association that has members who are medical people, scientists, or even consumers, activists, we need to work from top down and bottom up. As associations, we need to just to do our best to just educate professionals, health professionals, about, with evidence, using good data, what they can do when they face patients with problems. And we need to try and also talk to our governments. Now, what we can achieve needs to be, you know, seen in the future. But what we could do amongst us as harm reduction associations is share practices. If something works well, let's discuss it.
Yeah,
and it may be, you know, good for us also.
I think
or not good, but let's at least examine it and decide whether it can be of use.
I think you're absolutely right, and bringing together and having a broader understanding of the medical community and what their issues are. If you go to, for example, the Parkinson's UK website for Parkinson's disease, they, and you see doctors, they're actually on the videos talking amongst each other, and they're saying, if you are a smoker, you have a 70% reduction of chance of getting Parkinson's disease. But if you stop smoking, it reduces to 50. They're talking all about smoking. Here, for example, is an opportunity for our area of dealing with smoking cessation and less harmful products to talk to the doctors who are working in that area, who are seeing therapeutic benefit of nicotine. There's that cross-fertilisation between the different siloed areas, and I think that's what will grow the area, that's what will grow the benefits of, you know, you were saying you're smokers, but why do people smoke? There's depression, there's anxiety, there's Parkinson's in that case, there's many reasons. And bringing together the doctors that are dealing with those other areas, and it's an outside the box sort of thing, but I can see things are moving in that direction, because I was absolutely shocked to see Parkinson's disease doctors talking about having people almost encouraging, and it's even written there on the website, to smoke because of the reduction, but they obviously and clearly were not aware or not even voicing the fact that there are less harmful alternatives to smoking, because in that instance, and it was supported by Oxford University Parkinson's things, that nicotine is helpful to Parkinson's people, but it's so much better if they could get that nicotine from the heated tobacco, from nicotine pouches, or from vaping rather than from smoking.
The other thing, of course, is data. Let's create more data. I know it's not easy, especially if you're a researcher and they tell you if you take money from the industry, you will be banned from different societies, from different conferences. So there is a sort of racism against, you know, the people who are interested in seeing harm reduction, giving us more data. But if we just, you know, connect and ally together and share, you know, experiences, I think we can do more than if we stay alone, you know,
Absolutely.
and try our own small thing.
Yes, collaboration is best.
Collaboration is what I ask, and let's connect. I don't know whether, Professor Mata, would you like to add anything more in our discussion? Okay. He's mute here. Professor Vardas, until Mr. Mata connects.
Yeah, I don't like to speak more, of course, but again, I would like to summarize at least my own philosophy, my own, let's say, view, saying in this business we need everything. First, we need sincerity. We need metrics, okay? We need, which is difficult these days, a little bit broader understanding about the human needs. In my opinion, the nowadays society, international society, for X reasons, well understandable reasons, likes to be politically correct. And the political correctness has special characteristics. In this political correctness, smoking reasonably is, let's say, a black horse. Nobody likes the smokers nowadays. This is reasonable, absolutely. I am not a smoker. On the other hand, as you said, Lina, it's a little bit sad. Any kind of racism against those who are, let's say, are skeptical regarding the complete cessation of any investigation around all these alternatives, etc. It is honest for us, the scientists, and important to have the opportunity to investigate how much harmful is vape or not, how much harmful is the tobacco heating or not. To give another example, under this spirit of the political correctness, and in many cases behind this political correctness, there are huge political, let's say, strategical issues. I will not be surprised if from one day and thereafter, obesity, malignant obesity, will be similarly, let's say, rejectable. Similarly, how to characterize this?
A stigma.
Yeah, a stigma. And I will not be surprised suddenly to listen from the healthcare systems that malignant obesity is not anymore such well supported by the social care systems like the normal and well-fitted bodies, correct?
We know that insurance companies do not really cover all
but
risks.
I'm going to the discussion to this way. So imagine under this doctrine of the political correctness, anyone who is consuming one glass of alcohol to be stigmatized. Anyone who is using an alternative product without significant risks, that's why we need metrics and data, to be again stigmatized. Anyone who is using a little bit more salt, anyone who is obese, all these categories to be stigmatized and to some degree punished by the healthcare system, taxations, etc. There is a fear here. I'm afraid about a community with such sterilized and so much easily stigmatized persons. And And as I said once, some years ago, in a big meeting of WHO, and at the same time, I'm really very much concerned why all this business with cannabis never are coming to the international forums. Is cannabis harmful so much, helpful, not important for the insurance companies because does not create ischemic heart disease or cancer? What? Nobody speaks about cannabis. Nobody speaks about all the habits which would be catastrophic for the human being. But it's important to say that here we have an international stigma around any questions and any discussions about smoking, of course, reasonably, and even policies of harm reduction, which is pity.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all my speakers. I would like to thank all of you who are here. You just have to keep that this summit cares about people. This all started because we place people, not patients, in the middle. Everybody, the government, the doctors, us, should serve people. So that's the side and the focus we need to keep. The people who made this society recognize that harm reduction is something that could make the lives of people better. And this is why we pursue that forcefully and with very dynamic. And I ask you all to just support us, and we will support you to the best of our capacity.
But Lina, sorry, again, before we close this session, because I like our presence here to be a little bit essential, I would like to encourage the industry, which makes a lot of profits, to spend money, like the pharmaceutical companies, to prove the difference between the real smoking and the alternative products. We desperately need arguments. We desperately need, let's say, metrics, as I said before, to prove the difference. This is very important for anyone, for the sincerity and the importance of this discussion.
I think, to be fair to the industry, I think they've invested a huge amount of time and money to create a lot of evidence. I think the issue, one of the biggest issues that they face is this Article 5.3 of the FCTC Treaty, which prevents or asks governments not to engage at all with any industry. And this makes it very difficult to present that evidence. I think the industry really is to be commended. It has done a huge amount. And I think you're absolutely right there that this evidence is needed, but it needs to be put into the speak, as Mary said, the speech that the politicians making the decisions understand. I mean, you know, we heard discussion earlier about nicotine flux. It's a very significant issue, yet anyone who was a politician listening to the presentation on that would not have been able to take away anything to make a decision on such something like that. We both come from a sort of political background, and you just know politicians won't go there.
And I think as well, you know, the problem that politicians have is that it's not simply that their governments have made an agreement not to deal with the tobacco companies, but it's also that there is a gut reaction from many of them that they don't want it. So if they see that tag on the research, their assumption will be, fairly or unfairly, that that research is biased heavily in favour of whatever they're selling. And the same, I think, would be true of any research, certainly in the United Kingdom, that was put forward with any company's name on it. The assumption would be that they've written that for their own, to their own ends, rather than to the public health. And that is a barrier, because the money for the research is obviously with the big companies.
This is a very important discussion, Lina. I totally share your views that the scientists nowadays, the scientists, my community, is in panic to be involved in such honest discussion and in such honest investigation. This is true. But my question is, so why we should not open this discussion? In my opinion, openness and sincerity is the utmost, okay? In front of the European Union decision makers, in front of WHO decision makers, we have to speak openly, not in favor of the industry, no, in favor of the realism,
Yes.
okay? To give an example before we close, Lina, I was really very upset, extremely upset, when 10 years ago, WHO in St. Petersburg organized a meeting with 300 persons. And Galea, the non-communicable diseases director, was present. And they started talking about the harmful effects of wine. Okay, of course, harmful effects of smoking, harmful effects of salt, nothing about cannabis, zero. And I stood up and I said, personally speaking, not as a president of the European Society of Cardiology, I made it clear, excuse me, you're talking about one glass of wine is so much harmful? Because our scientific community, the cardiologists, have even a positive
advice.
Yeah. And you know the answer? That I was shocked. He told me, Professor Vardas, indeed, even one glass of alcohol is harmful. That's why this evening, in our official gala reception in the Hermitage Museum, only orange juice and water will be offered. Trust me, and I don't like to go here in details. During the gala reception, I asked him for 1 or 2 minutes to speak. And I said, look, what we are doing here, not in a Christian country, not to offer even one glass of wine for health reasons is not honest. It is, you have to accept that other well-known reasons are behind this decision. I don't like to go further, okay? So openness, sincerity, deep understanding is my recipe. If the alternative products are harmful, we have to abandon. If, as we abandon smoking, but if the alternative products help a significant part of the population to reduce significantly their risk, we have to take seriously into account. As the priests in Africa, as I said at the beginning, are in front of the huge dilemma to indicate, to suggest condoms or not. If they follow the official doctrine of Pope, no. But AIDS is rocketing. If instead are more realistic, more pragmatic, saying, okay, God is
understanding.
Good, yeah. So condoms are needed. Okay? So this is my realistic approach.
To conclude, I just remind that SCOHRE has an ambition to try and get resources to just build an observatory of the smoking habit related to health outcomes in Europe.
Lina,
Now that
just...
so, yes, Professor Mata. please. I mean,
Yes, before the technical glitch, sorry, I was saying something. I would like just to finish that quickly.
Course.
Yeah, maybe it's worth sharing that our nation's proactive response in further cutting down smoking prevalence in our country, which is 18.5% of our population are smokers, is manifest in the landmark enactment of a Republic Act 11-900, known as the vape law. For the very first time in the legislative history of our country, we achieved a national differentiated regulatory framework governing vapor products and HTPs. And that's a milestone for us. That's worth sharing for everyone.
Well, thank you very much for your last comment.